6:30.
Okay. I would like to welcome everyone to the Henry County Zoning Board meeting of Thursday, November 17th, 2016. We have a few housekeeping items we'd like to mention. This meeting is being televised live on Charter Channel 180 and AT&T U-verse Channel 99, and will rebroadcast every Thursday at 7:30 p.m. and Saturday at 12:30 p.m. and is available by video on demand on the county website. Now would be a good time to turn off your cell phones and laptops or anything else that makes noise. If you're going to be speaking tonight, we'll ask you to fill out a public hearing speaker card. We're going to allot 10 minutes for those who want to speak in favor of a case and 10 minutes for those who want to speak in opposition of the case. For example, if 10 people wish to speak, they all share the 10-minute slot and so on. Please address the board when you come up to speak. At this time, we're going to have the invocation pledged by Delandra Nelson.
Stand, please.
Please stand.
Heavenly Father, we thank you for this evening. We thank you for all your wonderful blessings. And we ask that you be with us in the decisions that come before us this evening. These things we ask in your name. Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
This meeting will now be called to order. Okay, do I have a motion to approve the agenda?
I make a motion we approve the agenda.
We have a motion by Mr. Babb. Do we have a second?
A second.
We have a second by Mr. Head. Any discussion? I have a question for staff on this. The agenda, the one that was put in our chair, that's a new agenda because it had an addition to it. Was that posted, or is this, should the old agenda be amended?
The old agenda needs to be amended.
Okay, so we need to rescind that motion because we have to have an amendment to that agenda. So we've just not approved the agenda.
And if someone wishes to make a motion to approve the amended agenda,
Okay,
we would be able to move forward with it.
Okay, so I'm going to go back to this to the seconder that seconded it was Mr. Head. Mr. Head, would you be in favor of us amending that motion that Mr. Babb had to allow for a motion for the amended agenda?
Yes.
Okay, Mr. Babb, you want to restate your motion?
I make a motion that we accept the agenda with the exception
The amended agenda.
of the amended
Okay.
agenda.
So we have a motion to accept the amended agenda.
And I second.
And you second it. Any discussion? All in favor indicate raising your hand. Motion carried. Okay, the minutes. Don't have a motion to, we don't have a minutes, do we? Because we approved them last time?
Those minutes are not ready yet.
Okay, they're not ready yet. So we don't have any minutes because they're not ready. All righty. Do we have any staff comments tonight?
None, Madam Chair.
Okay. So at this time, we're going to move to the agenda items. And if a staff will please call the first case.
CU 1609, Deonta Jefferson of McDonough, Georgia, requests a conditional use for property located at 44 Liberty Industrial Parkway in land lot 221 of the 7th District. The property consists of 5.89 plus or minus acres, and the request is for a place of worship in the M1 Light Manufacturing Zoning District. This is located in District 2, and the case will be presented by Julie Yoder, Planner 1.
Good evening, Madam Chair. Good evening, Board.
Good evening.
The conditional use before you tonight is for property located at 44 Liberty Industrial Parkway. You can see it hatched in green on your map. And the conditional use is for a church. In regards to zoning history on this property, the subject property is zoned M1, light manufacturing, and was granted a conditional use and variance in 2009, which granted the use of a church on this property with 2 conditions. And the variance granted The variance was from setbacks and buffer requirements as the building is situated 20 feet from the property line instead of the required 50 feet. One of the two conditions in that previous conditional use stated the conditional use for the church would be approved for a maximum of 3 years, and that has since expired. The conditional use requested tonight would apply to the entirety of the subject property if approved. And as I mentioned previously, a church has previously been located on this property. Churches are permitted in the M1 zoning district with a conditional use. And with that being said, staff recommends approval of this request, and I'd be happy to take any questions you have.
Okay, do any of the board members have any questions for staff at this time? Okay, Sandy?
So there has been a church there before.
There has.
Are they gonna use that building, or are they gonna?
There are different suites within this building. I don't know if they're in the same suite or not. That conditional use was only for that suite, which may be why they made it a sunset clause. This conditional use would be for the whole building to allow a church there. It won't take up the whole building, of course.
Okay, so the variance of the setback from 50 feet to 20 feet has already been approved?
Yes, that was from the prior cases.
Okay,
So that's just what's existing on the property.
okay.
Anyone else have any questions for staff at this time? Okay, we're going to ask the applicant to please come forward, state your name and address for the record.
Hello, everybody. My name is Deontay Jefferson, and I am the pastor of Freedom Life Center.
There's anything you'd like to add to staff comments for the board?
There's a previous church there now, and we really not going to do anything outside of what they're already doing. So I think it would probably still be safe for us to be there.
Okay, do any of the board members have any questions for the applicant? Okay, you may be seated.
Thank you.
All right, at this time, we're going to call up for those who want to speak in favor of the case. You'll have 10 minutes to speak in favor of the case. Okay, we have no one coming up, so we'll see if anyone wants to speak in opposition of the case. Okay, I would like the applicant to please come back up to the podium. But you don't have to state your name and address, just come up here just in case. Oh, yeah, you forgot to state your address, so if you do your name and address again, I don't think I heard you state your address. For the record.
Of the current building,
No, your address.
108A J Lane, Hampton, Georgia.
Okay. So do any of the board members have any questions for the applicant? I do have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
So are you already pastoring, are you the pastor of the church that exists now, or are you going to take over that?
We're going to take over that facility. The
Just the
current
facility.
pastor is here.
Right. And when will that happen? Just as soon as this, I mean, is it already vacant, or?
No, ma'am. We'll do it on the first week in December.
Okay, all right then. So, and you're saying you're just going to occupy the suite, just the suite that's there now?
Yes, ma'am.
And, I guess question to stop is, why is it for the whole building then, if it's just for that suite? It's just in case they want to expand or something?
We felt it was appropriate to grant the conditional use to the whole building. There was
Okay.
nothing restricting that. So.
Okay, all right, that was all I had. Anyone else have anything? Okay, you may be seated.
Thank you.
Thank you. Please call the case.
CU 1609, Deontay Jefferson of McDonough, Georgia, requests a conditional use for the property located at 44 Liberty Industrial Parkway in Land Lot 221 of the 7th District. The property consists of 5.89 plus or minus acres, and the request is for a place of worship in the M1 Light Manufacturing Zoning District. This is District 2, and the case was presented by Julie Yoder, Planner 1.
Okay, do I have a motion for this case?
Yes, Madam Chair, I make a motion to approve case CU 1609 with staff, which staff recommends.
Okay, we have a motion for approval by Ms. Nesbitt. Do I have a second? I second. Have a second by Mr. Head. Any discussion? All those in favor indicate by raising your hand. Motion carried. Thank you. All right, we can hear the next case.
VR 1613, Racetrack Incorporated of Atlanta, Georgia, requests a variance from development regulations for the property located at the intersection of Jodico Road and Patrick Henry Parkway in land lot 50 and 79 of the 6th District. The property consists of 5.55 plus or minus acres, and the request is for wall and canopy signs in District 4, and the case is presented by Julie Yoder, Planner 1.
Good evening again.
Good evening.
The variance before you tonight is the associated request to the rezoning and comp plan amendment you heard on November 10th for the racetrack property. So to briefly review, the property is located at the northeast intersection of Jodico Road and Patrick Henry Parkway. And let me pull a map out. As you can see, hatched in green, there are 4 variances being requested. The applicant is requesting 2 variances. Which are number 1 and 2 that you see. The first is for additional wall signs for the gas station canopy. And the second is for additional square footage for the canopy signs. Staff is recommending a 3rd variance for the elimination of setback requirements along Jodico Road and Patrick Henry Parkway, as well as an additional variance for additional square footage for the total signable area on the property. And I know that's a lot to hear, but I tried to briefly explain that as best I could on this document you see here. Staff is recommending the request to eliminate setbacks because, as you know, a small portion of the property along Patrick Henry Parkway exists within the LCI, which is the Livable Centers Initiative study boundary. And it was commissioned to make communities more livable, walkable, accessible, and pedestrian bicycle friendly. If you see on criteria 4 in the staff report, section 11.2.5 of the ULDC, specific requirements for a variance to the aggregate signable area standard, gives 6 prerequisites that must be met for that, and condition number 2 is not met, which states that the minimum land area for the project shall be 10 acres. Also, the number of signs is not explicitly listed in the ULDC as a varianceable item. With all of that said, planning staff recommends denial of the requested variances for an increased number of wall signs and an increased aggregate size for these signs, but recommends approval of the request for an elimination of setbacks along Jodico Road and Patrick Henry Parkway. And with that being said, I'd be happy to take any questions.
Okay, does the board have any questions for staff?
I do.
Okay.
Can you repeat a variance request number 4? I didn't get that.
Let's see.
You said there were 4. There's only 3 in my report.
Right, sorry, we added the 4th one, I apologize. The 4th one, well,
What is
I
it?
don't think it matches on here. I switched them on that. The 4th one we added was a variance approving additional square footage for the total signable area. So
Oh, I
for
see.
this,
It's number 3 on here.
yeah, I switched them, I apologize.
Okay, okay.
For this property, they're allowed 300 total square feet of signable area, any type of sign, any location of sign, and they're requesting a total of 437 square feet of signable area.
Okay, I guess I'm confused. I mean, would it not be better served to go with what they're asking? Because doesn't that make it, oh, you're saying they're asking for 400 and what?
437. You can see on the 3rd variance on the screen.
Right, right.
And they're only allowed by right 300 square feet.
Is this 2 separate structures, or that they're asking for signs for, or is it all one structure?
It's the primary gas station building, and then they also have the canopy for the gas station.
Is it connected to the building?
It's not.
And is each building, are they allowed to have 3 signs on each building?
No, we require the 3 sign limit to apply to both.
Okay, my question is, if this were 2 buildings on a property, would each building be allowed to have 3 signs on it? Or is it just limited to the property?
I believe it's per property.
In our sign code, there are two separate charts which give our regulations, and the determination as to which chart to use is based upon whether there's a single business on that parcel or whether there are multiple businesses on that parcel. So to answer your question, no. If there were two buildings on that property, it would not be allowed to have 3 wall signs.
Per building.
Per building?
Correct.
Correct.
If it was separate owners, they could? It just has to do with the owners, is that what you're saying?
Everything hinges on whether there are multiple businesses on that property or just a single business, and for the subject property, it's just a single business. So they're limited to 3 wall signs for this
Total.
parcel. Correct.
So explain to me then how you got to item number 3. What is that? Is that just your recommendation so they can have the 6 signs?
Staff added that. We're not recommending it, but we added that because we found that what they're requesting is more than what's allowed. So they're requesting 6 wall signs total, which equal 287 square feet, 2 ground signs, which equal 150 square feet together. That comes out to 437 square feet, which is more than the 300 they're allowed. So we felt we'd add it to this variance.
Okay, so, I'm really confused now. So is item number 3 the same as 1 and 2, or what makes it different?
They're all asking different things specifically. I know it's confusing. The first item is asking for additional wall signs. You're only allowed 3 by right. They're asking for 6. So that's what that's about. The second one is requesting additional square footage for the canopy signs. So they're requesting 3 signs on the canopy structure alone. And 2 sides of the canopy, and I have a picture that might help illustrate better.
And Madam Chair, while we're waiting for the display, what staff is bringing to the attention of the Zoning Advisory Board is that should the applicant be granted their variances for the additional signage, if you don't address the aggregate signable limitation, they may still be denied for their sign applications because they exceed the total amount of square footage that the ordinance allows. So if you're inclined, if the board's inclined to grant the request, you would also need to address the aggregate signable area.
Which is item number 3?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Are you?
That's what helps me. I'm clear.
Okay.
You were good. And I apologize, it
No,
took
it's
me a
okay.
while to get it, but that helped me. Yes.
Does any of the board members have questions for staff? Okay, if not, will the applicant come forward, please? State your name and address for the record.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the Zoning Advisory Board. My name is Andy Welch. I'm with the law firm of Smith, Welch, Webb & White. I'm representing Racetrack and the property owners in this variance application. Julie has explained to you exactly, breaking it down systematically into what's being requested. In order to comply with the size of the signs, there is that aggregate number. But I think what we would like to do is just to simplify the request. And let me go over the development item first, and then I'll come back to the signs. Because the development setback issue is really the most important variance that we have as a company asking for. So that's number 1. And let me just be clear about what we're asking. In our discussions with staff, it was because that property is part of the proposed but not adopted or implemented LCI plan that we talked to you about last week. You'll see that the property has some unique characteristics that were not the cause of the property owner, but rather the cause of the GDOT coming in to put in Patrick Henry, and also to expand the road here, which is to take, rather than taking a tapered corner that is normally part of a right-of-way take, it's a box corner. And that point there, it intercedes into what would be your buffer area and your setback area. So to be clear, we really don't need any variances to the setback per se of the buildings because we meet those. But if we have to meet the exact buffer landscape area right here of 20 feet, this dotted line here is where the curb would be with a 20-foot separation from that point. Where we have it here is necessary in order for the trucks to turn around and actually fill up the fuel tanks. So you have to have this turning radius here, which is why we're showing and pushing that curb over a little bit into the landscape buffer area. So in terms of when we say setbacks, what we're really referring to is that landscape buffer. I know staff is referring to setbacks so that they could, in theory, push this building all the way up to the property boundary line. But as we talked about at our last meeting on the rezoning, we now have rezoning conditions that would not allow us to do that because we have to put in a landscape buffer, and it has to meet certain criteria. So in essence, what we really just need is the relief here into that buffer area. We're still going to meet the requirements of the buffer as you zoned us for last week, or recommended for zoning last week. But that's the main setback issue we have. So we would ask that you approve that encroachment of the setback, buffer setback. Is that, are we clear on that, Julie? Is that?
I think so.
Okay. And then the other thing, now turning to the sign issue, I think it would be simpler for us just to try to simplify the request, because I think the staff's raised every exact point that they should raise with respect to our request. We're not going to ask, we had talked about asking for an increase in the signable area. We're going to withdraw that. We're keep it at the 300. But we are asking for the permission to put up 3 signs on the canopy. So we'll make it fit within our signable area, because we could take some signable area away from one of the monument signs, and we could shift the signable area around on the property. But when you deal with the canopy signs here, what we're really asking for is permission to put the racetrack on the canopy edge, and to be able to do it on the sides too. So that would require you granting us permission to put 3 extra, the staff calls them wall signs, I would call them roof signs, but the code says that a canopy is a roof structure. So a canopy roof structure like this for gasoline stations, we would consider that to be a roof, and you would be allowed to have roof signs. But the staff sees it as being a wall, and therefore it should be treated as a wall sign, in which case the property is limited to 3 wall signs and 3 roof signs. But if you interpret the canopy as having a wall, then it's only 3. We could not put the canopy signs on that. So that's why we're here for the variance, asking permission to be able to put those small signs on the canopy. So I'm going to just kind of help staff by cutting out a lot of the aggregate sign issues, drop it down to 300. We'll stay within the ordinance in that respect. And then also I want to make sure that I'm confirming with staff that in our preliminary discussions, we have awnings on there, and those awnings have a hot dog on it. And so it looks like this. It's in your applications. And I want to make sure that I'm correct, that we're not counting the awnings towards signs, right?
Correct.
Okay. So sorry.
It's okay.
So in essence, we can eliminate a lot of issues by just focusing on whether or not you're going to allow us to put 3 signs on the canopy or not. If you do, we'll make them fit in accordance with the ordinance. I think that simplifies it down.
Okay. Does the board have any questions for the applicant? Okay.
So Julie, can you put up those 4 conditions
Oh, yeah.
again? So show me what would change then. Be number 1 to just allow, what needs to change? I guess I'm confused now, because you're saying you're going to drop some and you're going to make it simpler. So tell me what changes in these conditions, except for number 4. I know number 4, that's.
Yes, so Julie has it outlined for you. Wall signs, you're only allowed 3.
No, I know that. I'm
Okay.
just saying, you said you were pulling back something, so.
Yes, so here, let's look at number 3 first. We'll go backwards. So number 3, requesting to increase the signable area from 300 to 437. Let's just, 300 is allowed. Julie has it right here. 300 is allowed. So we're saying, so ignore this one. So number 3 would be off the table. Okay, so that's
Okay.
eliminated. And then on number 2, there would be 2 signs that we are asking for them to be 25%. We're taking that off the table too, so this is no longer needed. So really we're boiling down to 1 and 4. So 1 is, we'd like to be able to put 6 total signs, wall signs, by their definition. 3 on the building, 3 on the canopy. That's what we'd like for the signs. On number 4, we would like that to be reflected that we're allowed to encroach upon the buffer setback at the front of the building.
So basically, all you're asking is an additional 3 wall signs for the gas station canopy.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, that's all I needed to know.
Does any other board members have questions for the applicant?
And plus the development, plus that encroachment in the buffer area.
Yeah, the buffer, yeah.
Okay.
Now, I have a question for you.
Yes, sir.
And now, do you plan to, you're looking at 287 square feet for the 6 wall signs, or have you decided exactly what's the square footage of the 6 signs total? Not to exceed the 300, I understand, but you have 6 wall signs, 3 at 287. Are you reducing that to 150, or are you just gonna go with?
Because it's the total, that's a total signage allotment, 300, we'll adjust some of the other signs, make them smaller to accommodate the canopy signs. So we'll just kind of make it fit by borrowing from somewhere else.
Which is the ground signs, right?
Which is
And
the
that's all 6 wall signs at 287.
Right.
Okay.
Okay. So
So-
total signage on the whole property is limited to 300
To
square feet?
300. Mhm.
And that's the ordinance, and we'll stay within that.
Okay. Does any other board members have questions for the applicant? If not, you may be seated, sir.
Yes, sir.
We'd like to allot 10 minutes for those who speak in favor of the case. 10 minutes for those speaking in favor of the case. If no one's coming forward, we'd like to allot 10 minutes for those speaking in opposition of the case. 10 minutes for those speaking in opposition of the case. If not, you may come forward, Mr. Welch. Does the board member have any additional questions for the applicant? If not, you may be seated. You call the case, please.
VR 1613, Racetrack Incorporated of Atlanta, Georgia, requests a variance from development regulations for the property located at the intersection of Jodico Road and Patrick Henry Parkway in land lot 50 and 79 of the 6th District. The property consists of 5.55 plus or minus acres, and the request is for wall and canopy signs in District 4, and the case was presented by Julie Yoder, Planner 1.
Okay, you've heard the case. Do we have a motion?
I'd make a motion for the request of VR -16-13 to approve only additional 3 wall signs for the gas station canopy and the elimination of the setback requirements along Jodico Road and Patrick Henry Parkway.
Okay. We have a motion. Do we have a second? Have a second by Mr. Richard. Do we, at this time, any discussion? No discussion? All in favor? Motion carries. Okay. Call the next case, please.
VR 1612H, Spencer Mosley of Meansville, Georgia, requests a variance from development regulations on the property located at 25 Tom Eason Drive in land lot 249 of the 6th District. The property consists of 0.212 plus or minus acres, and the request is to allow gravel parking in District 2 and also City of Hampton, and the request is presented by Edward Morrow, Planner 1.
Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the board.
Good evening.
The request before you this evening, the subject property is located in downtown Hampton at 25 Tom Eason Drive. This is at the intersection of Tom Eason and Elm Street, as you can see on the map. The applicant is the owner of a 3,500 square foot warehouse on this parcel, and the parcel is currently zoned C2 General Commercial. Per section 67-214, subsection 1, commercial establishments are required to provide paved, dust-free parking surfaces for customer use. The applicant, in his first variance, is requesting that he be permitted to use gravel to surface his parking lot. And I have a photo of it right here for you. So he's asking that he be allowed to perhaps refinish this with gravel or use the existing gravel. His second request is because of the unique shape of the parcel, we believe he's only going to be able to provide about 4 parking spaces, and he's provided a site plan here to show. And so his second request is going to be that in the future, any off-street parking requirements be limited to the 4 parking spaces he believes he'll be able to provide. You can have a look at the site plan here. And again, this is significant because once Mr. Mosley has applicants for businesses to locate in his warehouse, depending on the particular use, each use requires a different off-street parking requirement. So say the place of worship that we discussed earlier would actually have a relatively large parking requirement versus say for a warehouse use, which this is actually a warehouse facility. It may have a smaller requirement, maybe 5 to 6 spaces. Nonetheless, these are the 2 variances that Mr. Mosley is requesting. Staff recommends denial of both requests. I'd be happy to take any questions you have.
Okay, are there any questions for staff from the board members? Okay, Mr. Risher.
All right, so if he were to have to pave parking, would it only be for the 4 spaces that are shown on the site plan?
No, sir. He would be required to pave, well, actually, as long as he does meet his off-street parking requirement for the use that's applied for. But most likely, he would pave the entirety of the parcel that remains. And I have another picture if it would better illustrate. Just to show some context, this building is in the middle of downtown Hampton. It's adjacent to parcels that are actually included in the historic downtown overlay district, and so it's in the vicinity of other businesses that do offer paid parking, and I understand the city has also provided some as well. So just to show you some context. You can see the stairs there lead up to the actual building that Mr. Mosley owns. To the left, there's another business. You can see they provide paved parking. Also, when we look elsewhere towards downtown, you can see that there's a pretty good effort that's been made to maintain the character of downtown and enhance it.
So he's wanting to put gravel on 4 parking spaces.
No, ma'am. He's requesting that he just be allowed to provide a gravel surface. I'm not quite sure what the dimensions of that surface would be, but as I said, for each business license that comes in, we evaluate it, and we're required to assess it for off-street parking. The Hampton City Code requires that each particular type of use be assessed for the amount of off-street parking it would require. And he would just have to provide enough for whichever type of business was coming in. The particular business license that I think prompted this was for a thrift store, so it was actually for a general retail use.
So even though it says that he is to provide a paved, dust-free parking, he's wanting to put gravel,
Yes, ma'am, that's correct.
but not, I'm confused as to whether he wants to put it everywhere or just on those spots where he wants people to park.
That might be a question for the applicant.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions for?
I have one question for staff. Now, are you saying based on the retail, he's required to have 4 parking spaces?
No, sir. Actually, I'm not sure of the internal configuration of Mr. Mosley's building. He may actually be leasing a portion of that 3,500 square feet to a different use. So honestly, we can't say at this point what his off-street parking requirement would be.
Madam Chair, Mr. Nelson, if I may, there was a business license that was evaluated by staff, which was the impetus, I believe, for this request. It was for a thrift store, and 15 parking spaces were required.
Any other questions for staff from board members? Okay, we'll ask the applicant to please come forward, state your name and address for the record.
Good evening. I'm Mark Whitley with Whitley Engineering, 38 East Main Street, Northampton, Georgia, representing Mr. Mosley. And to answer your question about the gravel would include the forward spaces, but obviously there would be some more gravel that would allow the actually vehicles to be able to back up and maneuver on the property itself. This is a building that's been there for a long time. If you're familiar with Hampton, it's just one block over from Main Street. There was a machine shop there for a large number of years. Actually, Mr. Mosley ran that business personally. He has now relocated his business and is looking to rent it out for retail at this point. And of course, he's in a position, he's kind of stuck between a rock and a hard place there from the perspective that being where he's at, close to the downtown area, his property, and of course, properties from years ago, there was kind of some odd configurations between buildings and property lines. So he has no way of obviously expanding his property. So physically, he cannot provide more than 4 more parking places. It just will not happen. But I don't think it's as big of an issue with him as far as the type of surface. I think he's probably willing to work with that. But the part about the parking spots, the parking spaces itself, he physically can do nothing about it. The good thing about it is that, of course, with it being located close to the downtown area, there is a considerable amount of on-street parking that the city does, on-street parking that the city does provide. So whenever the thrift store or whoever's using it might take up the 4 spaces, there's other parking spaces close by that people can use. So that's the good thing about it. But I'd be glad to answer any questions, but that's kind of it in a nutshell.
So he definitely wants to do gravel. He's not willing to pay.
He's asked for gravel, obviously, because the building's been there for forever, and it's always been gravel. So he's, is that the right thing to ask or not? I don't know, but he's asked for that. Again, I think he's willing to work with people on that. The surface is probably not as big of an issue as the number of spaces.
Okay.
Mr. Brady, do you have anything since this is?
This is currently used to park on anyway, isn't it, Mark?
Yes.
They have events in Hampton all the time, and it's covered up for parking, but that's not justification. Nobody's really using that, so if there's an opportunity, people use it, So I know the city is working, trying to incorporate this particular area into an ordinance that would recognize more off-street parking for this business. But I think the number of spaces, that is your issue of having those. You wouldn't be objective to paving, but. Okay.
I think he'd be okay with that.
All right. So, sort of outside our control on the number of spaces on that.
Okay, any other board members have any questions for the applicant?
Just one question. Now,
Okay,
if I'm
Mr.
hearing
Taylor.
it correctly, he would be open to actually paving the structure, correct?
Yes, sir. I do believe that he would be okay with the, if you wanted to restrict it to say he does have to provide a hard surface, a paved surface, but that you would allow the reduction in the parking spaces, I think he would be okay with that.
Right. I understand we can't do anything about, we can't create more space.
Right.
That's understandable. I guess the next question is that, does it meet the handicap, and this probably would be for staff, does it meet the requirements for handicap accessibility?
The applicant would be required to meet all requirements of the code.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for the applicant? All right, you may be seated. Thank you.
Thank you.
And this time, we're going to have those who want to speak in favor of the case. If you'd like to speak in favor of the case, please come up. All right, I don't see anyone coming up. Those who want to speak in opposition of the case. Okay, I don't see anyone coming up. The applicant, please come back. Do the board members have any last questions for the applicant? Okay, you may be seated.
Thank you.
All right, let's go ahead and call the case.
VR 1612H. Spencer Mosley of Meansville, Georgia, requests a variance from development regulations on the property located at 25 Tom Eason Drive in land lot 249 of the 6th District. The property consists of 0.212 plus or minus acres, and the request is to allow gravel parking. This is District 2 within the city of Hampton, and the case was presented by Edward Morrow, Planner 1.
Okay, do we have a motion for this case?
Yes, Madam
Mr.
Chair.
Mr. Bennett.
I'd like to make the motion to deny VR 16-12-8.
Okay, I have a motion for denial of VR 1612H. Do I have a second?
Second.
Have a second. Do I have any discussion? Okay, all those in favor of denial of the case, please indicate by raising your hand. All right, the motion carried. All right, next case.
I just wanted to bring up, there were two requests. The first was for the paving. The second was for the reduction in the off-street parking requirement.
They all fell under VR 1612H,
So we are denying both.
Right, so he's denying both requests.
Excellent. Thank you.
That's correct.
Madam Chair, did you say to call the case?
Yes, please.
Okay, I didn't
Okay.
hear, I'm sorry. The case number is VR-16-15. Clark's Pest Control of McDonough, Georgia, requests a variance from development regulations on the property located at 3548 Jotico Road in land lot 65 of the 7th District. The property consists of 0.71 plus or minus acres, and the request is for a variance from landscaping and buffer requirements to adjacent properties. It's located in District 3 and will be presented by Stacy Jordan Rudisill, Chief Planner.
Good evening, Madam Chair,
Good evening.
board members. The location of the case before you at this time is on Jotico Road, on the southwest corner of Jotico Road and Summerfield Drive. And you may recall that there is a traffic signal here at the intersection of Peach Drive, which is one block to the east of the subject property, which is indicated in the green hatching. The zoning map indicates the zoning of the property, and the property immediately to the west of the subject property is also zoned commercial. The property immediately to the south of the subject property is zoned residential. The variance request of the applicant is twofold. Number one, to eliminate buffer requirements, which would only be along the south property line where the subject property abuts residentially zoned property. And number two, to eliminate landscaping requirements. The site pictures, which were included in your exhibit books, indicate the character of the area and also you can see the subject property in the top right corner here, which is the front of the subject property. The rear of the subject property has been paved, and there is a strip of landscaping buffer along the south property line and also along the west property line where Leland cypress trees are currently located. However, this strip does not meet the buffering and the landscaping requirement that is requested to be for the request for the buffering to be eliminated, or rather to call what's out there acceptable. And I'd be pleased to answer any questions.
Any board members have any questions for staff at this time? Okay. Mr. Risher.
All right. Is this actively being used by Clark Pest Control now?
It's that the existing house is being retrofitted for use by Clark's Pest Control. Right. It's my understanding that they have not moved into this structure.
Okay. Now this property was involved with some sort of a land exchange or right-of-way acquisition with Henry County, I believe.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. The property was rezoned by the Henry County Board of Commissioners. It was a county-initiated rezoning, and this was accomplished on August the 5th of 2014 with certain conditions. It's my understanding that the existing location of Clark's Pest Control was in the track of the extension of Campground Road.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions for staff?
I just have one question about that project itself. Is it going to go forward? I mean, is it an active engineering design and acquisition?
It's my understanding that it is.
Okay.
Mr. Risher, you have any other questions?
No, not right now.
Okay, any other board members have any questions for staff? If not, we'd like to call the applicant to please come forward, state your name and address for the record.
Hi there. My name is Gary Clark. I'm with Clark Pest Remedy. Our current address is at 3631 Jodico Road, McDonough, Georgia.
Okay. Do any board members have any questions for the applicant? Would you like to add anything to what staff has already?
Well, yes, ma'am. We've been in our current location for 28 years, and about 4 to 5 years ago, we were contacted by the county because they were talking about taking 10 feet off the back, and we didn't hear from them for a year. Then all of a sudden they show up and say, well, there's been a change, we need your whole deal. So I'm like, okay, what do I do? So they came and made us an offer which was not even enough to buy a lot to build a building on. So of course we had to go through the negotiation. And then we were contacted by Andy Walker through the county. He had a house down the street. He was wanting to know if we were interested in doing a land swap. We went and inspected the house. It needed a lot of work done to it, the roof, the siding, this, that. The septic's in the front. The only place we could put parking was in the back. I've got a lot of equipment, and we've had problems, break-ins where we already were. So part of the thing was I already have a security fence in a parking lot where I'm at, and I just simply wanted basically what I've already got over here. So we would give them the information. We gave them a detailed, itemized list of everything we needed. We inspected the back as the only place we could put a parking lot. Henry County paid for the parking lot. They approved the sign, the this, the that, the zoning, everything. Then we finally get everything squared away after a couple of years of this negotiation. Then they come and tell us, okay, you got 30 days to get out of here and be down there. We've got a new roof, new siding, drywall, all kinds of stuff to do. We got over there and we had a roofing crew, a siding crew, this, that, everything. Everything's going along good. We've got it about 80%. Oh, while we were waiting through all this, vandals broke in and stripped all the copper out and took the AC unit. So the county had to pay for that because at that point it wasn't our property. So in 3 weeks' time, we had to get this an enormous amount of work because we were getting ready to get kicked out of where we were. So we rush over there, get all this stuff done. At the end, the county in that itemized list says $31,000 for asphalt. That's not an 8x10 pad. And so we were told to go do all this work and get it ready. We get over there, we're in the middle of it, almost finished. And all of a sudden the zoning people show up and said, wait, you can't do this. And so I guess I'm trying to understand why the commission and everybody that knew this was going to happen didn't communicate with the planning and zoning, because it seems like everyone in the county knew about it except for them. So they come out there and say, hey, wait a minute. Well, it's already been done, and there is a buffer there, but if we went by a 40-foot buffer, we wouldn't even have enough parking places, and we would have never agreed to the situation. So it's kind of a mess, and this has been going on for almost 4 years. And, you know, it hasn't been a very efficient process on, you know, for us. So the communications has been terrible. And, you know, I'm not a developer. I kill bugs. I'm good at what I do, but I'm not a developer and planner. We did what we were told to do. Get this work done. You got 30 days to get out of here and be in there. Then like a week before we were going to move our business, which if you move a home, that's not a lot of fun, but moving a business is really tough because everything has to be coordinated. And it's just been a big mess. And so, at this point, I don't know what to do except for we can maybe look at some engineering things to try to make it a feasible situation. But, I don't know what else to do except to, hand it back and start over or get this situation, try to get it handled as best we can. But do you have any other questions about it?
No, we just wanted to see if you had anything to add. I think they
Okay.
were.
Well, I just wanted to make sure that, wanted to make sure that it's not a situation where I went and bought this property and this was a deal that the county was involved in and paid for. So,
We understand. Okay, Mr. Nelson.
The question was asked, now, are you currently in that space?
No,
now?
we can't. We're at a work stoppage.
Oh, okay.
We can't do anything.
Now, where are you operating business?
Out my old building, which we were supposed to have been out of, they said 6 months ago.
Oh, okay. And the next question now, is there a problem with providing landscape for the property?
Landscape?
Yes.
Like,
That was one of the requests, eliminate the landscape requirement. Can you provide a landscaping requirement for
you
it?
talking about like bushes and stuff?
Whatever the landscape requirements are, staff, did we have something different? We have a request here, variance, eliminating the landscape requirements.
There's a minimum of 12% of the site that would need landscaping. That would involve a certain amount of vegetation in the front setback, the side setback, and the rear. It's not likely that the applicant could provide the required landscaping and provide the parking lot landscaping as well, in addition to any buffering. And so the request that's before you tonight is to eliminate these requirements. And of course, you can see as indicated on the screen that there is a certain amount of buffering there, but it does not meet the landscaping requirement.
Well, I'd venture to say that probably most of the businesses in that area, especially those that have been there for a long time, probably hardly any of them, meet the current requirements. And so, and I think that we need to consider the fact that some governmental actions have an effect on this request. I remember when I worked for Henry County, this project was in the concept stage at that time, and so it's been around a long time, and it's finally, starting. And of course, it's having certain effects on Mr. Clark's business, but I'd just like to make that, comment.
Okay, any
for
other
the
questions?
board's benefit.
Any other comments? I'm sorry, Mr. Risher. Any other questions for the applicant? Okay, you may be seated.
Thank you.
For those who want to speak in favor of the case, you have 10 minutes to come up and speak in favor of the case. All right, for any of those who want to speak in opposition of the case, you'll have 10 minutes. All righty, if you would come back up, see if anyone has any other questions or comments they want to make prior to us calling for the vote. All right, you may be seated.
Thank you.
Okay, let's call this case, please.
Oh, there we go. Case VR-16-15, Clark's Pest Control of McDonough, Georgia, requests a variance from development regulations on the property located at 3548 Jotico Road in Land Lot 65 of the 7th District. The property consists of 0.71 plus or minus acres, and the request is for a variance from landscaping and buffer requirements to adjacent properties. The property is located in District 3 and was presented by Mr. Stacy Jordan Rudisil, Chief Planner.
Okay, do you have a motion for this case?
Yes, I'd like to make a motion to approve the request for the variance to remove the landscape and buffer requirements.
A second.
Okay, we have a motion by Mr. Risher and a second by Mr. Babb. Any discussion? have a discussion. Mr. Risher, there were two items here, eliminate buffer requirements and eliminate landscaping requirements, and you just said eliminate, you just mentioned the one.
No, I thought it said the landscape,
I'm just asking, do you want to rescind your
the
motion?
landscape and buffer requirements to the adjacent properties.
Landscape and buffer requirements.
Yes.
Okay, you did say that. I didn't hear that. I apologize.
Okay, I'm sorry.
I just want to make sure staff that got that. It was both. Okay. All right, so all those in favor indicate by raising your hand. Okay, motion carried. Thank you. Call the next case, please.
Oh, the next case, I'm so sorry. Nancy Stokes of Atlanta, Georgia requests rezoning 16-27, RZ-16-27. Nancy Stokes of Atlanta, Georgia requests a rezoning from C3 Highway Commercial to RA Residential Agricultural for the property located on the corner of Mount Carmel Road and North Bridges Road in land lot 113 of the 6th District. The property consists of 11.25 plus or minus acres and is for a zoning reversion. This property is located in District 3. The case will be presented by Mr. Stacy Jordan Rudisil, Chief Planner.
Good evening, Madam Chair,
Good evening.
board members. The case before you tonight is hatched in green, as you can see on the exhibit on the overhead and also in your exhibit books. To give you some context, this is I-75. This is where Mount Carmel crosses I-75. This is the intersection of Mount Carmel with North Bridges Road, which is an unimproved gravel road. And the subject property is on both sides, both corners of the intersection of Bridges Road and North Mount Carmel Road. This property is a part of what had been the Henry Promenade rezoning earlier this year. Also earlier this year was a request by 1050 North Bridges Road LLC to rezone from C3 to RA, and that request was approved by the Board of Commissioners. That property neighbors our subject property immediately to the north, and so there's precedence for action to rezone or to revert, if you will, the zoning of the subject property from C3, which was in order to accommodate the failed Henry Promenade development, back to RA, residential agricultural. Staff has evaluated the applicant's request. We have noted the action of the Board of Commissioners in following the Zoning Advisory Board's recommendation of maintaining a commercial land use designation on the future land use map, however, approving the request for the neighboring property to rezone from C3 to RA. And so staff has no objection, and we recommend approval of the applicant's request to rezone from C3 to RA.
Okay, are any questions from the board members for staff at this time? Mr. Risher, you don't have anything?
Yes, I remember, the previous request, and even though we, kept the land use plan intact by keeping the long-range commercial designation for this area, the people who were affected are concerned about the impact on their property taxes, and so for that reason, that's why we took the previous action to the Board of Commissioners to revert to that particular zoning. And I think this is the same situation with these requests coming up tonight.
Yes, sir.
Okay, anyone else have any questions for staff? Okay, if not, we'll have the applicant please come forward. Please state your name and address for the record.
My name is Nancy Stokes. I live at 3824 Ashford Knoll, Atlanta, Georgia, 30319.
Is there anything you'd like to add to staff comments?
Yes, and I hope you don't mind if I read it because I'm very nervous.
Go ahead.
Okay.
That's fine.
Good evening first.
Good evening.
I am here tonight to request that my property, which was to be a part of the Henry Promenade, be rezoned from C3 to RA. I agreed to be rezoned from RA to C3 only because Richard Bell, the developer, told me that he had the money and backing to build Henry Promenade. We even signed an option with him by which he agreed to pay us earnest money of 10% at certain intervals over the time that we were under option. And he also assured me that I would never have to worry about paying commercial taxes because that wasn't an issue, that people didn't have to pay commercial taxes until the first commercial building was started. And at that time, it would no longer be mine. I would have already sold it to him. So I was in no danger whatsoever of having to pay commercial taxes. Before my signing for the rezoning, our attorney received a letter from a person in the tax assessor's office stating that we would not have to pay commercial taxes. I felt that we had done our homework to the best of our ability and in good faith with Henry County and Richard Bell, and so I signed Mr. Bell's option. At his request, I gave him extensions numerous times of the option, which he said he needed to get all the property owners to sign on and to start the financial process with his backers. I thought I had done the right thing. Later, I learned in a conversation with the chief tax assessor that taxes were not based on buildings on the property, but on the assessed value of the land in the area. This was the opposite of what two others in that same office had told us previously. And what they said caused me to sign the option in the first place. Both of them agreed. It was on two different times, two different people. Excuse me, I've lost my place. This would also mean that my taxes, I'm sorry. So this was the opposite of what what the chief tax assessor told us was the opposite of what the other two ladies had told us in his office. So here I was, I'd signed the thing, and then we find out that we are going to be responsible for commercial taxes unless we get it rezoned. We can't do this. We've heard all kinds of figures floating around for what the taxes would be, and one of them was something like $58,000 a year, and we can't afford that. We would have to forfeit our property to Henry County. And I've been told by one of the Henry County officials, Henry County doesn't want to get your property that way. So this is where we are at present. We are really afraid of having to pay those taxes. We don't think that we should have to because we were told two different things coming from the same department. And I don't mean to say that anything, any wrongdoing was going on there, but it does seem sort of unfair to us that we were told two different things. The most important one after we signed the option. So I'm just here to ask you to please to rezone our property so that we may keep it. And as an aside, I thought I would like for you to know that my family has owned this property since before the Civil War, and I'm the fourth generation to own it. One of my great-grandfathers was Harvey Carmichael, an upstanding citizen of McDonough, and he was related to one of the two branches of Carmichael families that I believe still exist. My other great-grandfather was A.G. Harris, who was known to everybody at that time as Judge A.C. Harris because he served as your magistrate for decades without ever having to run into any opposition. They even named a day for him, and we all came down, the family, to celebrate with you in the square on a Sunday several years ago. So we've been here a long time, and we know that Henry County wants to do what is honorable and what is right by us, and I just thank you for hearing me and hope that you will rule in my favor and grant my request. Thank you.
Thank you. Do any of the board members have any questions for the applicant? Okay. Oh, you may be seated. That's okay. At this time, we're going to allow 10 minutes for those who want to speak in favor of the case. All right, and those who want to speak in opposition of the case? All right, you want to come back up here, so in case some of the board members might want to have a question for you? All right, any board members have any questions for the applicant? Okay, they don't have any. Okay, so you may be seated. Okay.
Thank you.
All right, let's go ahead and call the case.
RZ 16-27, Nancy Stokes of Atlanta, Georgia, requested rezoning from C3 Highway Commercial to RA Residential Agricultural for the property located on the corner of Mount Carmel Road and North Bridges Road in land lot 113 of the 6th District. The property consists of 11.25 plus or minus acres and is for a zoning reversion. Property is in District 3 and was presented by Stacy Jordan Rudisil, Chief Planner.
Okay, do I have a motion for this case?
Yes, I'd like to make a motion to revert the zoning of this property from C3 to RA Residential Agricultural.
Okay, so you're approving RZ 11627, is that what you're saying? Mr.
Pardon me?
Wisher, I just want to make sure I understood the motion. The motion is for approval?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, to revert it back to RA, okay. Do I have a second?
Second.
Mr. Head, I had a second by Mr. Head. Any discussion? All those in favor indicating by raising your hand. Okay, motion carried. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next case, please.
RZ-16-28, Roger Hicks of Riverdale, Georgia, requests a rezoning from C3 Highway Commercial to RA Residential Agricultural for a property located on North Bridges Road in land lot 113 of the 6th District. The property consists of 3.71 acres and is for a zoning reversion. The property is in District 3, and the case will be presented by Mr. Stacy Jordan Rudisil, Chief Planner.
Good evening, Madam Chair,
Good evening.
board members. The case before you tonight is also on North Bridges Road. So to get your bearings, the case that we had just heard is located here on both sides of the intersection of North Bridges Road and Mount Carmel Road. Immediately to the north of that property was the property that was previously rezoned by the Board of Commissioners from C3 to RA, and that's the property owned by 1050 North Bridges Road LLC, and the subject property is immediately to the north of that property. This is a vacant piece of property. It's similarly situated to the property that we had just heard. Staff evaluated the merits of the applicant's request. We noted the actions of the Board of Commissioners in maintaining the commercial land use designation on our future land use map, yet having approved the rezoning of the neighboring property from C3 to RA, and staff has no objection, and we recommend approval of the applicant's request.
Okay, any questions to staff from board members? Mr. Richard, do you have any questions?
No, I'd just make the same comments about this one as the two previous ones. The long-range land use plan still shows the area as commercial in the future, but as a practical matter and for the taxation issues, it should be looked at in the same way as the others.
Okay, if no other questions for staff, we'll have the applicant to please come forward. State your name and address for the record.
Kimberly Hicks, 7352 Mockingbird Trail, Riverdale, Georgia.
Okay, did you have any comments that you wanted to add to staff comments?
First, good evening.
Good evening.
And I'm sorry, but I'm going to say exactly what she just said, and I'm having a blood pressure issue right this second.
Okay. It's okay.
Everything she just said,
okay. All right.
Yeah.
Do any of the board members have any questions for the applicant? Okay, well, you may be seated, and if you want to fan yourself while we wait for
Thank you, ma'am.
Okay, for those who want to speak in favor of the case, you may come up. And I don't see anybody coming up. Anybody want to speak in opposition of the case? All righty. Okay, usually we have you come back up to see if there's any other questions, but if the board doesn't have any other questions, I'm not going to ask you to come up. They don't have anything, so we're going to call the case. Are you okay? Okay, all right. Okay, if we'll call the case, please.
Absolutely. RZ-16-28, Roger Hicks of Riverdale, Georgia, requests a rezoning from C3 Highway Commercial to RA Residential Agricultural for a property located on North Bridges Road in land lot 113 of the 6th District. The property consists of 3.71 plus or minus acres and the request is for a zoning reversion. The property is in District 3, and the case was presented by Mr. Stacy Jordan Rudisil, Chief Planner.
Thank you. Do we have a motion for this case?
Yes, I'd like to make a motion to revert the zoning of this property from C3 to RA Residential Agricultural.
Okay, I have a motion by Mr. Richard. Do I have a second?
Second.
Have a second by Mr. Babb. Any discussion? All those in favor indicate by raising your hand. Okay, motion carried. Thank you. Next case, please.
The next case is COMP-AM 1606. Kevin and Alicia Waters of Stockbridge, Georgia, requests an amendment to the comprehensive plan for the property located at 58 Old Stagecoach Road in land lot 92 of the 12th District. The property consists of 1.687 plus or minus acres, and the request is to change the future land use map designation from low-density residential to industrial. This is in District 5, and the case is presented by Edward Morrow, Planner 1.
Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the board. Sorry, excuse me. All right, so the request before you right now is for an amendment to our comprehensive plan, which, as you know, is our policy guide for future land use decisions. Subject property is located at 58 Old Stagecoach Road. You can see it on the zoning map on the overhead indicated in the green hatching. It's in very close proximity to the city of Stockbridge. In fact, a portion of the property across the street is in the jurisdiction of the city of Stockbridge. And you can see all the city property indicated by that green color. So in looking at the zoning map, you can see that the subject property is actually zoned RA, and the property next door to it to the north is zoned C3. It's my understanding that this happened because at the time, the owner of this property wanted to have a steel or metalworking shop next to his home with associated storage. But from aerial imagery and also from a site visit, it appears that it was not actually developed for this purpose. It appears to still be wooded. Not only that, there's a new structure that is on the property, on the rezoned property, it was never developed. And further on the current property, the subject property, there was an older home that has since been torn down and replaced by this structure, which I'll place a picture of. All right. The subject property, again, is zoned RA. It carries a future land use designation of low-density residential, and it requires an amendment to its future land use designation to permit expansion of the applicant's desired industrial use. The applicant has also made an application with the Department of Planning and Zoning to rezone this property at a later date, and that hearing will, of course, be held by this board. This area contains a mixture of what I would best describe as unsightly uses. They're mostly industrial. It's my understanding, again, as I've only been here a short time, that it's an area that, because of its proximity to railroad tracks, the eastern parcel boundary is actually within about 200 feet of some railroad tracks. And I'll show you the tax map just so you can see. Oh, that's not it. Oh. We were going to get to this. This is the future land use map. You can see those railroad tracks running right down next to the subject parcel. Again, the presence of those railroad tracks is probably the thing that's prevented this particular area from having like a clear growth trajectory. In any event, the future land use map and the comprehensive plan are intended to help us recognize opportunities and shape growth. So please keep that in mind when you are considering this particular request. And so while the subject parcel's adjacency to railway makes it less than ideal for quality residential development. The character of the area is definitely, it's questionable. There's limited road infrastructure, and it's staff's assessment that it's probably not the best area for expanded trade activity. The comprehensive plan identifies a few policies that may actually be helpful or persuasive as you're considering this, and I would direct your attention to the last one, housing policies on the last page of your staff report, sorry, page 2. H10 says to protect residential areas from encroachment of incompatibility, and that includes concerns of odor and light, things of that nature, things that might be noxious to homeowners, of course. So in any event, please keep that in mind as you consider this request. Staff recommends denial of this comprehensive plan amendment, and I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Do any board members have any questions for staff?
Yes, I have a question for you. The construction, the property that was, that's constructed there, what was the actual construction? Was it built as a residential property, or what was the construction?
Well, this is a photo of the actual structure. I'm unsure of the use, honestly, but it does not appear to be residential.
I understand, but, okay.
I have some other photos. One in particular, this is the view across the street. Just to give you an idea of the type of area that we're in.
Is that a cell tower?
It is a cell phone tower, yes, ma'am.
Okay, it's across the street from the picture you just have shown us, and that is is that Old Stagecoach?
It is Old Stagecoach.
Okay. Mr. Head, did you have something?
Yeah, I'm very familiar with this piece of property. The property that's above it, is that commercial?
It is currently zone C3, yes, sir.
Where they build fences at, where they rock the iron gates and.
The iron gate that's on the property appears to be for the subject parcel and not the one to the north. I obviously was not able to walk out into the brush, but it's fairly heavily wooded. But again, I pointed out that particular policy because this area seems to serve as kind of a buffer area. Again, I'm not sure, but it seems that perhaps the current use of the subject parcel is non-conforming. Perhaps is the best word, but just in seeing the character of the area, it would appear that perhaps there's a reason for this.
I have a question. So on the future land use map, they're showing us as low density residential.
Yes, ma'am.
But then you were saying it's highly doubtful, since it's very close to the railroad tracks, that it would be residential. And so my question is, what's the reasoning just behind denial if you see that that's a problem? Or not a problem, but an issue that you don't think, or was that an opinion, or is that staff's recommendation that it's probably not because it's near the railroad tracks and look what's across the street from it?
Having been there, it is definitely a professional opinion. Having looked at everything, being there, thinking about it as someone who would want to live there. Professionally, it appears to serve as a buffer zone. Thinking about it from the perspective of someone who might live in that area, which actually there is a residence to the south. I have a photo of it just so you can see.
Other residential properties, I mean, it looks like there's commercial, and then there's residential, and then this property wants to be industrial. And I'm just wondering how that commercial got approved right there on the corner. Was that prior to the future land use map?
The one on the south end, I'm not certain.
Commercial, that's kind of, because it's just like a commercial, all of a sudden it looks like it seems like sticking out like a sore thumb.
It does, but again, that's getting very close to the jurisdiction of the city. So,
okay.
Again, I do get the impression this serves as kind of a buffer zone between perhaps some conflicting priorities, if anything. The idea is that if we begin to make changes of this nature, they might begin to creep into residential areas. And so perhaps we should preserve these areas for current residents that live further in.
Well, my question is, if you look at the current zoning map, it shows that to the north that is commercial. But if you look on the future land use map, it shows that commercial as being residential, and then it shows the corner down there looks like it's an M1 or M2 on the current zoning map, but then on the future land use, it shows that it's commercial. It's kind of confusing.
Definitely.
Because some of it, it's like already commercial, but then the future land use shows it's residential, and then the spot that on the future land use that's commercial, it shows on here that it's M1, looks like.
Exactly. The growth trajectory for this area is definitely unclear. And again, that's why professionally I believe it's best to leave the area as it is rather than allow any potential further encroachment legally.
Do you see what I'm talking about?
I see exactly.
Okay, Mr. Risher.
Well, I'm also pretty familiar with this area. On the zoning map, there's a site that's colored gray, and I believe that's Johnson Steel. That's a steel fabricating company.
That's already there.
Right, that's already there.
Okay.
And it's on this railroad track. There's about 40 to 45 trains per day, and it seems to me it would be very doubtful that someone would want to build homes adjacent to that. I mean, that's just my opinion, but those are facts.
But now, we currently have homes right there adjacent to that, but this property is adjacent to some of those homes, am I correct?
Exactly. And it is a bit difficult to kind of comprehend. But,
Where are those homes? Can you point to that on this map?
Yes, ma'am. This R2 zoning is the closest subdivision. There is a home situated on this property right here. I thought I had a photo of it, but I can't find it at the moment. And again, this is a subdivision. All of these are subdivisions. This is R2 zoning right here.
Now, what, based on that M1 what's some of the things that actually can be on that property?
On an M1 zoned
Right.
property? Light manufacturing uses, so you might have some assembly. You might have something like a large warehouse, a distribution facility, something of that nature. Nothing very noxious, nothing like metal fabrication or anything of that nature that would require M2.
But there's something that's already there, right? Didn't you say, I just heard somebody say there's
But that's on the corner.
That's on the corner, right. And then you go up and there's a house, and then there's the subject property, and then there's commercial above that. But on the future land use map, it's showing that gray area as being commercial, believe it or not.
I'm thinking back to my site visit, and I don't want to say something that might not be true. But if I'm not mistaken, there's a cemetery. The cemetery is the white space on the corner, if that helps.
The little white space on the corner?
This right here.
That's a cemetery?
Tiny little cemetery.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
I was trying to remember what was there. I know that it has
I think you're
a fence
right.
around it.
It is. It has a little fence around it, and I believe you're correct.
Right.
Okay.
Well, it's some type of monument there. I went out to that property.
Okay. That's all I have. Anybody else have any questions for staff? Okay, if we could call the applicant up, please. State your name and address for the record.
Good evening, Madam Chair and members of the board. Alicia Waters at 295 East Mays Road, Stockbridge, Georgia, 30281. And to answer,
Comments?
I
The board will ask.
do.
The board will ask comments, but if you have anything you would like to add to staff comments.
I have a number of comments, actually. The one gentleman, I believe Mr. Head, had asked a question about the iron. It's actually Stockbridge iron that is down 2 parcels. The cell phone is across the street. To the left of them is Stockbridge iron. They are currently zoned M1, but they do they do fabricate metal there. That is what they do, and they've been there for a number of years. I do have a number of photos that shows the area that we're in, if I might show them. No, show this one. The first one you will see is that cemetery that you were referring to in question that is on the corner. It's that little white spot. And it does have just a small fence around it. It's right on the corner of Valley Hill Road and East Atlanta Road.
That's the backyard.
The next one, directly across the street from us, well, very much directly across the street from us, is a cell phone tower, but also straight across the street from us and just maybe 50 feet to the right is a pallet manufacturing company that is currently zoned M1. And again, you can see there's railroad tracks behind there. And I actually took this photo from our property. You can see East Atlanta Road and Rico's Mexican Fine Dining from across the street. Sorry, we're eliminating a couple photos of the cell phone tower since he had one. This is the end of our road. The cemetery is on your right, but at the end, right across the street, which is, I believe, only 3 parcels down from us, is OAR, which is some sort of a tree recycling environmental service company. They have a large presence there, and in addition, you can see the railroad tracks there as well. This, you can see the cell phone tower that is across the street from us. And to the left, those buildings, I believe they have 3 buildings, is Stockbridge Iron. And then there's a driveway on the left. I'm not sure if you can see it, but that is a house. There are, in the first 14 parcels of this road, there's only 3 houses on it. And this is from Rico's parking lot. You can see our building. In addition to the railroad tracks, I don't think you can see it in the picture, but you can also see the pallet company that's across the street from us. We purchased this property 5 years ago. When we purchased it, the house had been torn down, and that structure that is there is currently there. I actually went in to get rezoning, thinking that we needed to do rezoning. The only thing we were going to do with the property is store our equipment in it for our business. And I was told that we did not need to rezone, and they were actually kind enough to give me a letter telling me we did not need to rezone. We could store our property the way it was, in addition, put up the fencing that we had requested. And again, as was stated, we do own the C3 lot next door as well. So with those things in mind, it seems as though, with the information that the staff had already said, that it does seem reasonable that it should be at least the first portion of that road before the residential starts should be changed to industrial, because as was stated, not many people are going to want to move into that area or build a house. Those 3 people, if they should move, I would see those houses probably being empty, because no one would want to move where the houses are located. So it seems only reasonable that should be an amendment that should be made.
If I could add a comment. My name is Kevin Waters. Good evening, Madam and board members.
Same address?
Same address, yes, ma'am.
Okay.
We're husband and wife, yes, ma'am. That intersection where Valley Hill and Old Stagecoach intersect, that's the intersection where the young children were killed by the train. As Mr. I think it was Mr. Richer mentioned, there's about 40 to 45 trains that go through there every day. That is an accurate figure, yeah. And I forgot what my second thought was. But it actually, that area...
you talked about the children being killed there on the railroad tracks.
Right.
What was that? What was the point in that? Just because it's a busy railroad?
It is not an area where families should live.
Oh, okay.
Between the environmental recycling business, which used to be corrugated pipe manufacturing, where the OAR was, if you'll recall, when that property sold. It's an area that actually allows itself for commercial industrial use because of being where it's at and looking at the local businesses right there.
And I also, if I can add one more comment, I also feel not changing the comprehensive plan would then hinder any future growth, because it would discourage any sort of industry or business to come into that area. And again, then that would just allow the continued deterioration of the neighborhood, because no one's going to want to live there.
Okay, do any board members have any questions for the applicant,
Yeah.
Mr. Nelson?
I have a question in terms of the building that you currently own. You're showing a picture of your current building now, correct?
Yes, ma'am. Or
Okay.
yes, sir, I'm sorry.
Okay, and it was C3 when you moved there?
The building, where the building is situated, that property is RA.
Okay.
It was built before we purchased it, always been RA from what I understand. And that was the property, because we own the C3 lot to the north of that as well. That's an empty lot. We haven't done anything with that. But that is the property, where was I going with that?
You were saying that he was asking about that building, so you
Yes.
bought it with that building already there?
That is correct.
Okay.
And we just store our equipment for our business there.
Okay. why are they asking for OIs? I don't understand.
That's my question. Now, why are you asking for an OI when you're
We-
using the building now as a?
Good question. We actually, my husband and I do volunteer ministry work. So as we're continuing to do that more and more, we have an individual, excuse me, a friend that would like to purchase our property. He does metal manufacturing similar to what Stockbridge Iron does down the road, only he does not sell to outside customers. He doesn't have signage. The building would look just the way it is today because he doesn't have walk-in traffic or signage. But he would like the ability to do that, but as of right now, with the future land use plan the way it is, that hinders that from happening.
The friend that we're speaking of, Jeff Proctor, that's interested in purchasing the property, he's a Henry County resident. His business is metal fabrication, which is a lot like Stockbridge Iron. It entails welding and bending of metal, but small on a smaller scale. Nothing above that as far as industrial purposes. But we were told that we were required to go M2 because it's metal fabricating.
In addition, if that future land use map should get changed and we are allowed to operate there, I know our neighbors to the south of us do not want to sell, but the person that would like to purchase our property is very much interested in them should they ever decide to sell or something happens to them. So I know that that area then will continue to thrive because it won't left being an empty house with nobody wanting to live there.
So they would be asking for an M1, is that correct?
From what I understand, the person I spoke to in the zoning department was not sure why Stockbridge Iron and the pallet company, or I guess the Stockbridge Iron, was M1, because from what she saw in her guidelines, we are required to be M2 to be able to fabricate steel. So I'm not sure why there's a difference.
If I could elaborate, again, the concern is that there are two different jurisdictions here, one governed by the ULDC, the other governed by Stockbridge's UDC.
Yeah, I'm just kind of confused about the future land use map.
Well,
You know what I'm saying? There's already an M2, or I guess it looks like the M1 there. There's already commercial there. And then this future zoning map makes it, low-density residential.
well, I think, and I can't speak for exactly what's taking place, but based on the future land development map, the property, due to the size of those lots, is zoned for residential.
Because they're small.
Because they're too small to actually
For the
zone it
business.
back to, zone them M1, and then you're going with the small lots, trying to bring in industrial or that type on that area. It's basically too small for, the entire area is too small for a heavy industrial area.
Right, I see
And
what
the
you're saying.
city of Stockbridge is trying to, it's basically an eyesore, and the city of Stockbridge actually wants to see that as a residential area and bringing that area back.
Which I understand that. I just want to know how they're going to do that, because it's already got commercial and M2 on there. I mean, I understand where the city's coming from, but it's already, even across the street, there's M1. So you're just saying the future land use map even shows that M1 and being residential, and then the city owning some of it too. But that's fine. I mean, I'm just.
One of the
wondering.
points is not to increase the problem.
Oh, okay, is to decrease it, yeah.
Decrease it, and
Yeah.
as time goes, you don't have an increase of a M1 area, everything's on M1, and the property is not large enough in M1.
Right, I understand. Okay. Mr. Risher?
Well, I think it's important in the, in the land use plan to also look for some logical boundaries between uses and just what I can recall about the area, and is that here we have lots that front on both sides of Old Stagecoach Road, and they back up to existing residential. This Cactus Lane and that little subdivision there. Would it not be conceivable that that a block of light industrial land, some of which backs up onto the railroad that has about 40 to 45 trains per day, would it not be reasonable to think of the land on both sides of Old Stagecoach Road as a small industrial or commercial area? I really don't think it's conceivable that anyone would want to build a single family home in that area. That's just an opinion that for discussion. So.
And if I can make one further comment, the neighbor to our north that is a residential, his house number is 115. He also owns the adjacent property next door to him to the north of him, which is number 125. He currently rents that out for storage to Stockbridge Iron. They have a container and a truck that they store on his property.
Can you look at that on this? Can you go back to the current zoning map? Can you point to where you're talking about? The current zoning map, yeah, so you're, if you'll point to what you just said, who you're talking about. So
You're
this-
asking where Stockbridge Iron is?
No, no,
Oh,
no.
where that lot is that they're
Well, there-
storing?
she was talking about her neighbor that
Okay.
had a storage.
So that would be, no, I'm not pointing there?
No, right there. Okay.
That's our C3 lot.
There's our
Uh-huh.
C3
To the
lot.
north is number 115, which is
Oh,
our
yeah.
neighbor. It is a residence.
Mhm.
He owns the lot to the north of him as well. And that he is currently renting out to Stockbridge Iron for them for storage. There's just a container and a truck on it.
Yeah.
Okay, and also notice, which kind of voids out people not wanting to live by a railroad track, is so if I can see, there's an R2 subdivision right there on the railroad tracks as you go north on Old Stagecoach Road that butts up against the railroad track. So that kind of negates, as far as people not want to live near the railroad tracks, because they're already up there living near the railroad tracks.
If I can also comment, though, most of those houses, if you were to continue to drive down Old Stagecoach Road, the houses, most of them sit fairly close to the road, and they do have a good amount of property behind them. They're not like right on the railroad tracks like we are.
Okay. There's-
fairly deep lots of it.
They are.
Mhm.
Oh, and the other picture that he's showing there is to the north of Stockbridge Iron on the same side of the road. This used to be construction offices. I'm not sure what the purpose of it is right now. It is sitting vacant from what it looks like. But again, that is zoned M1, I believe, as well.
Any other questions for applicant from the board members? Okay, you may be seated. I don't really see anybody in the audience, but I'm going to go ahead and say if anybody wants to speak in favor of the case, you have 10 minutes. I see one person. Anybody want to speak in opposition of the case? Okay, unless the board members think they have any other questions for them, I'm not going to ask them to come back up. Anybody?
I just have a question for staff. This entire area here, do you have any proximity of the square footage or the acreage that
On a
we're looking
particular
at?
lot? No, sir. I wish I could give you a reference, but I can't think of one right off. Actually, the subject parcel itself, just to give you an approximation, is 1.687 acres. So the subject property hatched in green is about 1.687 acres.
Okay.
So would it be safe to say that most of those lots are 1 to 2 acres, looks
Somewhere in
like?
that range,
Yeah, I
yes,
mean, I don't
ma'am.
know if that's to scale or not, but
It
it
is.
looks like those other properties that are north of there that I said were residential up against the railroad tracks, they look like they may be a little bit bigger, maybe 2 to 3 acres even looks like, if that's the
Well,
scale.
that color to the north there, that's actually R2, and the R2 district requires a minimum of 30,000 square feet.
Okay, yeah, so they're all bigger lots. Okay. Any other questions for staff? All right, if we can call the case.
COMP-AM-1606, Kevin and Alicia Waters of Stockbridge, Georgia, request an amendment to the comprehensive plan for the property located at 58 Old Stagecoach Road in Land Lot 92 of the 12th District. The property consists of 1.687 plus or minus acres, and the request is to change the future land use map designation from low-density residential to industrial. This is District 5, and the report was presented by Edward Morrow, Planner 1.
Do I have a motion for this case?
Yes, Madam Chair, I'd like to make a motion to follow staff recommendation that we deny this request from going to an M1.
Okay, we have a motion for denial. Do we have a second?
A second.
We have a second by Mr. Head. Any discussion?
Well, I'd just like to also say in terms of this property is that it is an eyesore as of now, and we don't want to see it increase as an M1. I think it's not large enough to make it a heavy industrial area, and that would increase traffic within itself going across that railroad there. So as of now, I don't see any reason to zone this to M1.
Okay, any other discussion? Okay, all in favor of the motion, please indicate by raising your hand. Okay, though, we've got 3 in, those that deny the case. Okay, I'm sorry. Those who are for the motion, we're just gonna do it like that. Those are for the motion, please indicate by raising your hand. For the motion. The motion is to deny, okay? Those that are opposed to the motion, indicate by raising your hand. Okay, so it's 3-3, and since I'm the chair, I'm going to break the tie, and I'm going to go with the motion to deny. Okay. So the motion carried. All righty, and I need a motion to go into executive session.
So moved.
So Mr. Risher makes a motion to go into executive session. Can I have a second? A second by Ms. Nesbitt. Any discussion? All those in favor indicating by raising your hand. Okay, we're getting ready to go into executive session. Yes, sir. We have to read this before we make the motion? Yes, ma'am. Okay, so what do we do with the motion we just made? I have to read Georgia code before we go into executive session. So the motion we just made is probably null and void, so we're going to redo that, okay? Thank you for bringing that to my attention. Okay, so we're going to call for executive session in accordance with the provisions of OCGA 50-14-3 and other laws pertinent to the advice of the county attorney for the purpose of potential litigation. Okay, so do I have a motion for that call?
Yes.
Mr. Richard made the motion. Do I have a second? Ms. Nesbitt, any discussion? All those in favor indicating by raising your hand. All right, motion carried. All right, thank you. We're going to executive.